Well, we have Matt Heilman with us today. We're very excited to have Matt here. And for our third legislator interview, he's a relative newcomer, I guess, to the legislature, but he's made his mark already on the bills that have come through last session. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and find out a little bit about him personally, who he is as a person outside of the legislature. So, welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You betcha. So let's start with maybe telling the viewers who you are outside of the legislature, and then we'll get into the, the legislative stuff.
Sure thing. Yeah, well, I was born and raised here in Bismarck. I went to school at Bismarck State College, currently online, going into finance at Western Governors University. Right now, work outside of session. I do a little bit of work at Beck News, and I'm
Hmm.
also doing a little bit of work with some Bitcoin mining going on in North Dakota and South Dakota, being like an administrative assistant, you could say. So that's what I have going on right now, but I'll hopefully be done with school by the end of the year.
Okay, excellent. So what you're saying is you're going to be a Bitcoin billionaire after all this is done?
I hope so. If I had student loan debt, I'd probably use Bitcoin to pay it off.
Well, yeah, if they accept it, you might as well.
Yeah,
Okay, so I kind of alluded to it earlier, but you've been a legislator for one session?
correct. Yep, I got elected in 2022. I was 20 years old when I ran my campaign, and I was 21 when I got sworn in, and I'll be 23 in a couple months now. But time really flies by. But I'm really enjoying it so far.
Good, excellent. And it's District 7.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. That's my district, but that isn't why we chose him. I'm trying to be fair here. Um, and why did you want to become a legislator? I mean, you're relatively young, okay? Although we have quite a few young or younger legislators this past election, which is really exciting. We had, I think, five under the age of 25, something like that. We had one who was 18. I love it because you're getting involved in the legislative process way ahead of most people in their lives, and it's neat to see that when you're an old guy like me. It's neat to see folks who are younger getting excited about politics. So what spurred you on to become a legislator? Because you're studying finance,
Right.
right?
Correct.
Not poli sci.
Right. Well, I went to Bismarck State College. I graduated high school in 2020, and I really got fed up with all the COVID mandates, wearing a mask, and all the vaccines, that sort of thing. And then I got into college at Bismarck State College, and I thought, well, it's just a community college in Bismarck, North Dakota, one of the reddest states in the country. It can't possibly be liberal. And then, for the most part, it was pretty fair, but I had a couple professors that were just wildly liberal. I mean, one of them was an Antifa supporter, and it just really pushed me further to the right. And all this was just mounting on top of each other and snowballing, if you will. And I figured, well, I have to get involved somehow. And it was spring of 2021, and my brother got me involved, and he said, hey, if you want to be involved and make a difference, become a precinct committeeman. And that's what I did in May of 2021. And then it was about 7 months later, roughly, I thought, well, my district is up for the legislative seats. I might as well run and make a difference there. I was pretty confident that I could win, and here we are.
Excellent. And I hear some really important, well-respected organizations backed you for your legislative run. This is completely self-promotion, is what I'm doing here.
Yeah, no, yeah, you guys supported me. Filled out the survey, went very well. Also had Gun Owners of America. That was another one. Um, no, it was a great campaign. Very stressful, but it's a lot of fun, and the relationships you make along the way are, you know, you can't even put a price tag on it.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting life or an interesting time, but it's incredibly intense. What did you expect going into this as a legislator? What did you expect for that 4 month period of craziness?
I don't know if I had a whole lot of expectations in terms of day to day. I knew the legislative process well enough. The only thing I really didn't know was conference committee and how that
Mm,
worked. And for those people who don't know, that's when the House and the Senate pass different versions of the same bill, and then they send a couple people from each chamber. They go hash it out, and come to an agreement, and then the chambers pass that one version again. That was the only thing I wasn't really clear about heading into it. But other than that, I had a clear idea of what was going on because I live in the capital. I was politically involved, so I already kind of knew what was going on here.
Yeah. Excellent. So let's pivot a little bit. As you know, we're a Christian organization, yeah, Christian conservative organization. So you're a Christian, and tell us maybe how your faith has helped you. How did you integrated your faith? And I know it's kind of an unfair thing to ask since you've been here for one term, but give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. For the record, I'm Catholic. So all of my morality, all my values stem from my faith, and I think most people's probably do. Um, but for the most part, I mean, for what I believe in, you can look up in either the Bible or the Catechism of the Catholic Church. That's where a lot of my values stem from. I recently actually, it's like a little side note, I've been reading Mere Christianity.
Oh,
Fantastic book.
it is absolutely awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I'm maybe through like a third of it so
Mm.
far, but like almost immediately, I think C.S. Lewis is talking about how atheism is just like one of the dumbest ideas imaginable, and he's like, not putting it in those terms, but he's saying atheism is just dumb. It doesn't make any sense, and you're just like willfully ignorant if you're an actual atheist. And he goes on to say, why it's not real, why it's not true, and how it really has no um, good benefit to society to be an atheist. And I know there's a few in the legislature, but it's just how can you possibly legislate if you don't believe in a higher authority? What are you basing your value system off of? I just don't get it.
There has to be some touchstone, some thing that you go back to and say, okay, within my world and life view, this is how this fits in this issue. And it can be difficult sometimes, but to not have that would, yeah, that would be kind of impossible. And
Yeah,
it's a good place to start. Lewis, you can't go wrong. One of the preeminent Christian writers of the 20th century. So you're starting off on a good foot.
right. Yeah.
So what has been your favorite part of being a legislator?
That's a great question. I think,
And don't tell us it's eating in the calf. It's really
yeah,
not that bad, but okay.
they have really good cheese curds at the Capitol here.
Do they? Oh, I
Yeah,
haven't tried those.
they're
Okay.
excellent. Yeah. They have my full approval. I think one of my favorite parts would probably be, like I mentioned earlier, the relationships. You just
Yeah.
can't put a price tag on them. There's a lot of great people here, whether they're elected people or they're working in state agencies. I
Yeah.
mean, there's just so many phenomenal people. I mean, you're working with everyday North Dakotans because we're a citizen legislature, right?
Right.
But there's just so many great people here, and I miss session a lot. And obviously, a lot of bad things happen during legislative session, and government's growing, that sort of thing. But you really do have to just find the positives in that, and one of them
Mhm.
is working with a lot of these great people here.
Yeah. Well, and I can imagine as a new legislator, you are learning a lot from those who have been here for a decade or 2 decades. I mean, they have a lot of the institutional knowledge, and yet you bring a fresh perspective on it too. And so we're kind of getting the best of both possible worlds. So that's really neat. Okay, so what is your least favorite thing about serving as a legislator?
Um, my least favorite thing about being a legislator is telling people I'm a legislator, uh, because when you tell people that, they just view you an entirely different way.
Yeah.
And before I tell them I'm a legislator, or if it comes up, they like just view me as a normal, like college student, right?
Yeah.
But then if I tell them, well, I'm a lawmaker, then the standards are just through the roof, and then they don't even like talk to you like you're a normal person at some points. It's just like I'm a normal person. I'm not anybody
Yeah.
special. Like, yeah, I'm a lawmaker, but it's not something I'm entitled to. I just ran because I believed in my convictions, and I want to make North Dakota a better state, and I want to leave it in a better place than when I first found it.
Yeah. No, that's fabulous. And I can imagine that you have that sort of reaction legislators do. And it's interesting because I know when I started my first session, I had a bit of that. Obviously, I really respect you folks and as legislators. I don't want your job. But I had a little bit of that. But then as you get to know the legislators, yeah, they're a guy who's in school, or there's someone who owns this company or whatever, and you learn about their families and all that kind of stuff. That's actually part of the reason we're doing this too, so that people understand that, Matt's a regular guy. He's got a lot of responsibility in the legislature, but you know, you can go out for coffee with him and it's okay. You don't have to talk about legislative stuff, right?
Right.
So now, did you sponsor any bills this past session?
Yeah, the one bill that I got through that I was the prime sponsor on was banning sanctuaries for illegal people or illegal aliens, if you will. That was the only bill that I got passed that I was a prime sponsor on. But other legislation that I helped pass was some reform in higher education when it came to a lot of the woke stuff, the DEI,
Mm.
diversity, equity, inclusion, for those of you who don't know. But yeah, that and ranked choice voting, that was another big bill that was vetoed by the governor. That was just a bill to get rid of ranked choice voting and approval voting. And we don't have ranked choice voting in North Dakota, but we do have approval voting in the city of Fargo.
Mm.
And the bill was to just eliminate it completely. And it passed both chambers. Governor Burgum vetoed it. We overrode the veto, and then the Senate failed to override it, so it died. But that was a very interesting bill and one that I had a pivotal role in, carrying it on the floor, hearing it in committee.
Yeah.
It was just it was an exciting one. That was probably one of my personal favorites. It might not be the biggest one, but it was like one of my personal favorites.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can understand that.
Yeah.
All right. Here's a tough one. Out of all the votes that you took, and you took a lot, hundreds, what was the toughest vote that you had to take?
I don't know if there were really any bills that were tough votes because I mean it's very well known that I have strong convictions and I'm more on the conservative end of the political spectrum.
Right.
I don't know if there were any terribly complicated bills where I thought, oh, I'm really torn this way or the other. I I really just have strong convictions and I know going into it what direction I'm probably going into. But I don't think there were any ones that were really too complicated for me. None that come to mind anyway.
Very diplomatic answer. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll take it though. So, because you're younger, I imagine, probably have, you think more kind of future, toward the future. I could be generalizing here, but um, what what do you hope that the legislature looks like in maybe 10, 15 years? And what do you think North Dakota is going to look like? I gave him no heads up this was coming, by the way.
Right. Ideally, I would make it so. I mean, if we're just talking total theoretical here, and a lot of this is
Yeah,
out of our control.
right.
But if we made homeownership a lot easier, I mean, I just don't really know how you solve it without like government intervention at this point. It's just like no young person can really afford a house
Yeah,
anymore. I just don't know what the solution is at this point. Just like things are just getting worse and worse, and
yeah,
then you have inflation on top of that, and those aren't really necessarily controlled by North Dakota.
yeah.
If I can make it better in 10 to 20 years, that would be my top two priorities. What the legislature looks like in that time, I don't know. We're all going to be gone. Everybody in the chamber and the
Mhm.
one across the hall,
Yeah.
um, unless maybe you switch over and run for the other one. But um, hopefully, I hope it gets more conservative. I mean, it is incredibly ridiculous how red North Dakota is. I don't think we should have any Republicans voting against the big pro-life bill that we had in legislative session. There's just no business in having any Republicans vote against that. So hopefully it's more conservative further down the road because there's just way too many moderates in a state like North Dakota. But that's like a problem in every deep red state like
Yeah.
North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming. You have all these moderate Republicans, and it just makes no sense because we're just so red. It's ridiculous. I can't even explain it other than that. But I just hope it's more conservative further down the
Mhm.
road than it already is.
So were you surprised when you came in, because everything's a continuum, right? You If you take all the Republicans, and on this end you have, folks who are just, rabidly conservative. I'll use that in a nice way. And over here you have folks who are barely conservative, barely Republicans. I'm not using that in a nice way.
Hmm.
And so there's this whole continuum, and now you kind of know the groups and where they sit. Were you surprised at kind of the percentages and how they fell out, and how many folks were kind of Republicans in name only and things like that?
Um, I think I was more so surprised by how many people don't really have any strong convictions, and I'm
Hmm.
putting that nicely. But there's surprisingly a lot of people, and I don't mean to demean or put
Yeah.
down any of my colleagues, but there's just a lot of people. It seems like who just show up and they follow the committee recommendation or they
Yeah.
follow how leadership wants them to, and it's just like, what are you here for exactly if you're not if gonna have any convictions whatsoever? And then number two, like, not follow those convictions if you have any. So I was pretty surprised by that, but yeah, it's just kind of tough to watch sometimes. But I mean, the way the House chamber is set up right now, it kind of ironically it follows the political spectrum. Like right now, we're
Hmm.
sitting in the far right side of the House chamber, and this is the most conservative part of it, and that's kind of generally how it goes, which I think is kind of funny, but that's just how it is.
Yeah, you're talking physically. This is
Yeah, this
the
is
conservative. That's what he's
yeah.
talking about.
Yeah, and like you see all these nameplates behind me. This is where all the more conservative people sit, and then as you get further left, you get more further left on the political spectrum. So I think that's just hilarious. But
Yeah, that is pretty good. I'm not going to ask for your theories on why that is.
yeah, I
We'll
don't
leave
know.
that up to leadership to explain that one to us.
Yeah.
Um, so, is there anything else maybe you'd like to say to your constituents? Here's a chance, your constituents, or North Dakotans in general, either about yourself or the legislature. And this is open mic time.
hmm I would say reach out to us. I
Yeah,
mean, we're pretty accessible. I mean, we have regular day jobs, and a lot of people are business owners. But
yeah,
I mean, we're accessible. We're your neighbors. We live relatively close. I mean, we're not all living in D.C. like we see in Congress, where they're just in D.C. all the time. We're here. Like we're right next door practically, especially in District 7. It's a pretty urban place. I can probably drive to anybody's house in about 15, 20 minutes furthest one away. But I would just say, get involved in your local district, reach out to your legislators with any questions, find out the voting records. I mean, look at scorecards from you guys. That would
mm,
be a great starting point. You have you guys and, gun owners of America, CPAC scorecards, and not every scorecard is great, but it gives you a good general idea of where your
yeah.
legislators are at.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the plug for the scorecards,
Yeah.
because a lot of people don't realize that that all these organizations put out scorecards. And by the way, you can find that on our website, ndfamilyalliance.org. But yeah, it does serve as an indicator. We have people ask us for voter guides, right? So that they go into the polls, and kind of they follow that and so on. Voter guides are very expensive to put out, as you might imagine, because you have all these positions. And so we refer people to the scorecard, and history generally is a pretty good indicator of how they're going to vote in the future. So yeah, they're very important. People do look at them. So, well, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it, taking time out of your schedule, and God bless.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.